Welcome back to Lepodcast episode 36. As always, you're here with Hoop, Saney, and the infamous ZZ Huncho. How about that World Cup final, Saney? Z, I don't know if you watched it, but...
The GOAT!
Listen
Listen to me, okay? That was the greatest... No, boys, I don't think you understand. That was the greatest sports final in history. It was better than 2016 Game 7 of the NBA Finals. It was better than the 2010 Super Bowl. It was better than any game that has ever been played on this planet. And to know that Messi won that game at the tail end of his international career to get the World Cup, it's a storybook. You guys talk about Jordan and LeBron. We're witnessing the real GOAT right now. These guys don't come close. Don't come close to Messi. But hey, I'm having fun. It's a good day, so let's continue with the episode.
Well, I wanted to harp on that because, you brought it up. I was going to read your thread of text messages. In classic Saney fashion, he sent like 8 text messages at a time when he was hyped up about the World Cup. What did he say? At 2:05 p.m. Eastern Time. Genuinely the greatest sports final of all time. Nothing will ever come close to that game. Nothing in history can come close to that game. The narratives, the way it ended, wow, I wish basketball had that much passion, bro. Now, since this is a basketball podcast, I just want to point out that you sound like a classic non-American. Z, do you want to come to the defense of basketball here, or am I going to do that for you?
Okay, you can. I'm gonna hear your thoughts on this because I was just reading an Instagram comment section of people talking about how soccer is just like not a sport and how basketball is just better and all these things. I genuinely want to hear like Saney now just kind of give me like his view on that because like, you got to think, you watch both. I know you watch soccer more than the two of us. So what do you think on that take like that of just Americans not taking soccer seriously, especially in the World Cup? I'm not gonna lie, I watched a few games so far leading up into the final game, and I was like, this is genuinely entertaining. Go to a bar, watch everybody just lose their mind over two countries. Like, how does this make you feel, Sandy?
That's ridiculous if that's what you're reading on comments. I mean, football is the biggest sport in the world. There's no arguing that. My favorite sport is basketball. I'm not a hater of the NBA, obviously. I love watching it. I think there's passion in it, obviously. I'm not saying there isn't, but there's a
he's
fine line.
He's on a podcast called Lepodcast. He's a basketball
No, but no, I'm saying like I enjoy basketball more than football. Like I enjoy it. It's my favorite sport. But I can't deny that feeling you get watching a game like the World Cup, the final, or watching like a Champions League final compared to the NBA. Like, there's a reason why viewership in the NBA is so much less than even the Super Bowl. Like the finals, we don't get a lot of views compared to other sports because with me, the NBA, it's like for us, it's like we're diehard fans. We can watch a 48-minute game and be like into it the whole way through. I can understand why people only watch the fourth quarter of NBA games. I can understand why people don't want to watch the first 3 quarters. Because I'm not going to lie, a lot of times it is boring. You'll see a highlight every now and then. You'll see a tough bucket every now and then, obviously. It's cool to watch in person. It's obviously, I enjoy watching it all 48 minutes personally. But I can see why somebody wouldn't want to watch a 7-game series every single quarter. Because that does just get repetitive.
I feel you.
It's the same thing with the NHL or the MLB. But like, for example, the Super Bowl, it's like every minute matters. Every second matters.
Even
the World Cup final, every second's going to matter. Every minute matters. And obviously, it's the same case for basketball, but the significance of losing a game in the finals in the NBA or even like the NHL, whatever, is nowhere near the same as losing in football, both American and European. Because you only get one shot. You know what I mean?
True.
That's why I think there's more passion. That's why I believe there's more passion when you watch a game. That's my reasoning.
So I definitely agree that in terms of the layout of the finals, that's one thing that makes soccer more passionate. Also, just because it's countries and people are, since soccer is very easy to play, it doesn't cost a lot of money. Like more countries are involved. Like there's so much more. Like
I would say this
as opposed to like New York versus Boston.
It's
like
easier
US
to play.
England.
It's easier to play. It's harder to get good at than basketball. It's easier to play than basketball, but it's harder to become better.
It's much more accessible.
100%. Yeah. I just want to, because I know people are going to try and go at you for that.
The one thing that so the reason I don't like soccer as much as other people is because I could watch an entire game and it'd be 0-0, especially without the PKs. True. Like I could watch an entire game and it'd be 0-0. Also, a lot of games are decided on what would be a free throw in basketball. when I personally think that the World Cup should be ended in a golden goal. I think that because that last couple minutes was intense. When
A
the
penalty
Argentinian
is
goalie-
nowhere near as
It's nowhere
no,
near
no,
as
no.
exciting.
It's a free throw. No, free throw is much
No,
easier
I
than
understand,
a
but you get
penalty.
what I'm saying. You get what I'm saying.
Even then, bro, a penalty, the nerves you get when you step up
I
on that
agree,
pitch,
it's
a lot farther than you think, by the way, too. It's not like as close as you think. It from a camera angle, if you're in that, when you're in that actual position and you see the distance you have and you're facing off against like a 6'5" goalkeeper, it's hard for both players. It's all about luck. Like with a free throw isn't luck because I can train and make 1,000 free throws and there's nobody standing in my way when I'm shooting it. It's just me in the basket and I don't even have to jump. I have to put no effort in that shot. It's literally just go with the form, go with the motion.
I agree, but
when
these
it comes
guys
to
are running,
penalties,
like,
it is
5
all in the
miles
air.
a game, and it comes down to someone making a wrong.
That's
play
what
in the
makes it.
box.
That's what
But
makes
would
it
you rather
insane.
it be golden goal at the end? Like I thought it was intense. That last.
I don't think it should be golden goal because the same way as if it ends in penalties, it's all luck. For example, France scored 2 times in 97 seconds. Argentina dominated that whole game. France scores twice in 97 seconds. It can just change like this. Like one lucky run, one counterattack, and the game can just be flipped. So it's the same case with the golden goal where it's like, oh, it was all intense, it was all this, and then one team just had one lucky run and now it's over. You know what I mean? It's like...
We got to get into some basketball. If we could be led into our first segment by our very own ZZ Huncho.
All right.
Trouble in the Bay.
Trouble in the
It's
Bay.
lurking.
It is lurking. There's a dark cloud over the Bay Area for fans. And it's because the Golden State Warriors in their last 10 games are 4-6 and have lost 3 straight. And Steph Curry, the light-skinned Messiah, is unfortunately out for the next few weeks with a shoulder injury that he sustained in the Indiana Pacers game, in which he was en route to carrying the entire state of California at that point in that game because he was just going so stupid, but whatever. So, the question on the table is, what are the Warriors' chances looking like towards the end of the season? Before the show started, Saney said that he's predicting play-in, and honestly, I'm not mad at him for thinking that. However, I said this to Saney. I said if the Warriors make it into the play-in, that could be the most historical run to a championship I've ever seen. Because I'm not counting out the Warriors in the playoffs in a 7-game series if they make it. If they make it. We've seen it before. The Grizzlies in that pivotal game in the play-in a couple years ago, they stole that. Ja did his thing. They made their way into the playoffs. It was tough. It was a 1-game scenario. Now, if they ran that thing to 7 like they did the next year, it was a different story. So I'm just saying, I have faith in the fact that Steph's going to come back and, kind of somewhat steer the ship in a good direction enough to get them into the playoffs and not have to have a play-in. But I'm interested to see what you guys are feeling. Starting off with Hoop. Sadie's like the main event in this because me and him butt heads all the time over our teams. So, Hoop, I want you to go first.
I just want to throw my team in there. I don't think they'll have a better regular season record than the Knicks.
I can quote that right now.
Which no one's talking about.
It is
no one's talking
December
about.
18th. I cannot wait to the end of the season.
No
6-game win
one's
streak
talking
as of right
about
now, right? 6-game win streak as of
Yeah.
right now, or is it 7?
6 in the East, playing Indiana as we speak. Julius Randle has an outside shot, an All-Star appearance. Like, he's very close. People
He
are talking
does.
about OG Anunoby should make it. Like, I think Julius gets the nod over OG.
Agree.
Simply because of the record.
Oh, 10 times out of 10.
Yeah, I don't.
10
See,
times
that's
out
the
of
thing.
10.
They're so ignorant. They're so ignorant. Oh, let's find these underrated players.
By the way,
OG,
you know why I
he
think
might be a
Julius is
D-boy
low-key?
candidate.
The narrative
He
that
might
the
be a
NBA
D-boy.
wants him. Their narrative is that the NBA wants him to go because the NBA just released a highlight reel of Julius Randle up to this point in the season. What a random thing to do, but I mean,
The comments
it's just
on that are
helping his
definitely
case.
so nasty, but
I know it's the most like mixed
I'm
match.
waiting for it. So basically, going back to the whole Steph conundrum, if they're in the playoffs, they have a shot. But it's going to be this stretch that I think determines that postseason success. They need to find it without Steph, and this honestly could be a good thing for the team. 20 shots a game are getting put into the hands of other Warriors players. And thinking about it with how Klay Thompson has not been a great shot creator. He doesn't have great shot selection. Jordan Poole is not a great shot selection. Draymond Green is just not a good shooter in general. I'm wondering how they're going to divvy up that offense when more shots are being handed out to people, and if they could still find efficiency in that. Because as of right now, the Warriors are 14th in offense despite having maybe the best offensive player in the game, and they're 19th in defense. So I'm wondering how the Warriors' identity is going to either evolve or drop off without Steph Curry. Do they play harder on defense? Like, I want to see what they look like without Steph over these next stretch of games. And I think a good marker of how good they're going to be is the Utah Jazz. Because the Jazz are a team that, while they don't have talent, they're playing good basketball. And a lot of times, talent can beat bad, less talented rosters that play well. And I think that's a good marker. Like, if they're going to be worse than the Jazz, like, I don't think they're doing much. I don't know how you guys feel about that. But the Jazz are a team that's not loaded with talent, but they just play good basketball. So if the Warriors are going to be worse than that, I have a hard time thinking that they would do much.
I love how Hoop mentioned how the fact that they're 14th with the best offense player in the league, and they're also 19th in defense. And history tells us that a team that is mid in both offense and defense in terms of the league, compared to the league, will never do good. I was under the assumption that they were top 10 in offense, if I'm being honest. I can understand if their defense is outside of that bracket, but the fact that they're in the middle for both categories, what is their threat? What, like, if I'm an NBA team going against them, what am I scared of then?
The only threat is history. That's the only threat.
Exactly. But the thing is, history won't save you forever. You know, everything comes to an end at some point. And I think with Curry going down, it seems more than, I hate to say it, they're going to go to the play-in. Their road record is already terrible. I'm not sure if they're going to be on a home stretch while Curry is out, which would be blessed for them. If there is the time for them to go on like a home run, it is now. If they're going to be away for a lot of these games, and I love how Hoop mentions the fact, will they play better defensively? I think absolutely not, because who's Steph's replacement going to be in the starting lineup? Jordan Poole, who is a worse defender than Steph Curry. And that's already bad enough. But Steph makes up for it by making you always an elite offense, right? Let's be honest. That's just how it is. Jordan Poole isn't going to make up for it. Jordan Poole, to me, has been, and nobody's talking about this enough. You know, I love Jordan Poole, the most inconsistent player in terms of what we expected out of him coming into this season. You signed a $130 million contract, coming back from an amazing play.
Rivals that, but he's
but nobody was talking about RJ Barrett like that at the beginning of the season.
Poole
everybody was talking about Poole. Everybody was saying pool parties all summer. Yeah, literally pool parties all summer. All this and all that, bro. It ain't a pool party. He's the pool boy right now, and the way I'm looking at it, and I'm not enjoying it because I'm a big fan of Jordan Poole. And I do want to see him bounce back. I hope it's just, I'm not going to knock him yet. Even if it's a whole bad season. I've seen players have bad seasons. Russell Westbrook, and they come back the next season and prove themselves again. You never write a player off, especially when they're young. But in terms of this season, Curry going down, they're not going to get better defensively. I know Hoop said, I want to see how they play. They're not going to play like the Utah Jazz because the Utah Jazz have had the same system the whole season. I don't see them changing their system completely now that they don't have Curry and find success in it. Your second best player is now Klay Thompson. That's not a good sign. It's not. As much as I love Klay strives off of Steph Curry. Klay strives off the fact that he plays beside the greatest shooter of all time because it shifts the gravity away from him. It's harder for defenses to play on Klay when they have a guy like Steph to guard as well. So now that the main shooting threat is going to be Klay Thompson and they don't have a guy like Steph Curry on that court, it's going to be much easier to defend Klay Thompson. Andrew Wiggins. Not going to speak on him. I haven't been checking in on him this season. See, that's something you're going to have to update me on.
I'll give it in my spirit.
Maybe I'll give Andrew Wiggins a nod over Klay Thompson for being the better Warriors player this season. Yeah. Sure. The Warriors are in a bad spot. That's what I'm going to say. And I'm doubling down on they're making the play-in statement because that's what it's looking like. And it's just, what were you going to say, Hoop?
If I could add on to it, they're in a situation where they're not running guys into the ground. Draymond and Klay need some rest breaks at times. They've sat their entire starting lineups, it seems, like every 6th or 7th game. So like it's just not pretty at all.
And
James Wiseman is in the G League still.
No, he just got back. He came back last game.
And what was he doing?
He did okay. I think he had like 6 and
minutes
6.
stats.
He didn't play like
12.
That's not okay.
Fives.
That's
he
not
didn't
okay.
play crazy
Slaps.
numbers like he played like 14 minutes. Like it was like an experience.
Was it crunch time? Like, did you watch the game? Did he play garbage time? Did he play?
He played.
What was it? Garbage time.
He played a little bit in the fourth. I don't think he was on the court in crunch time though. He might. I think he was though because Draymond wasn't there. So yeah, it wasn't.
It was garbage time, or was it memorable. Was it crucial?
Wasn't anything memorable.
Nothing memorable. I don't like that. I do not like that. That's a very bad sign for me. I hate to say this, as long as James Wiseman is on the Warriors, I am writing off James Wiseman. I do not believe in James Wiseman anymore on the Warriors. As a player, I believe in him still. As a player, I still think he's an amazing talent. I don't believe him on the Warriors. I don't think he fits the Warriors at all. I think the Warriors made a mistake drafting him. I know at the time they needed a big, and that's what we all thought they needed.
Mm-hmm.
But even if you look back on recent Warriors history, the bigs that they would always have were never like James Wiseman. These athletic guys that seemingly can do it all. They were always just rebounding merchants,
Andrew
or
Bogut.
just like
Right.
yeah, literally just like a presence in the paint that could set a screen for Curry. A guy who weighs a lot that can set a screen for Curry. That's what it
I
is.
just want to.
That's not James Wiseman.
I just want to correct myself for a second. I said the Pacers. He came back against the Sixers, and it was 6-4 in 11 minutes. 3 of 5 shooting, nothing spectacular, nothing impactful, really.
Did they lose
They
that
did
game?
lose that game by 12.
By how
12.
much? By 12?
It was a big
Yeah.
Loon. Big Loon almost had a triple double. He had 14, 11, and 9. That man would have got player of the game if they won. For real, ain't that crazy? 14, 11, and 9
dimes?
from Big Loon. Yeah. It was
You know
wild.
what's nuts is you can validate this more than I can because a lot of times defense stems from the bigs and their impact. People know Draymond's impactful. Has Looney been bad defensively? Because I feel like he's going to catch blame.
No,
Or do you
Looney
think it was
had
more of a lack of effort from perimeter defenders.
Looney had 14, 11, 9, 2 steals and 2 blocks. So when I watch Looney
No,
play,
I'm just talking over the totality of the season.
Right. Over the totality of the season, when I've watched Looney play, the reason that Looney is so beloved by Dub Nation is because bro just shows up and does his job. And I think it's been because he's been there for about 5-6 years. So I think it's the experience of having that veteran leadership with Draymond and Iggy and just guys that were telling him like, you got to go out there and get boards. He had 20 rebounds in one of the playoff games last year. And then this year, when we're looking at him this year, he does the same exact stuff. He's there cleaning up boards. If you come in, he's always got his hands up. He's never really a foul guy or a foul merchant or anything like that. And then that night when I was watching the game, rather, just watching him in that starting lineup, he had a big job to do. He had 11 rebounds. Guess who had the second highest amount of rebounds? Dante DiVincenzo with 10. So I just wanted to shout out Lord Dante. Love you. Keep doing your thing, man. You're so inspirational to a lot of gingers. Anyway, Kevon is genuinely just out there getting the job done at the end of the day. I've never really had a lot of moments in the past couple of seasons, especially like last season and this season, with watching him and just being like, damn, Kevon. I used to have those moments though, like a few years back when Kevon was out there literally to just do jump ball and then sit the bench. Like that was what his role was for a while. And then I think the time that he put in he's paid off. That's why Steve Kerr trusts him to be out there in the starting lineup so much.
So why does the Warriors defense suck if they have Wiggins,
The reason that the
Draymond,
Warriors defense
Looney?
sucks.
Is it strictly is Poole that bad? Is he
Okay.
really hanging on the bench?
So here's what I've kind of analyzed when watching it, right? So say the Warriors, like when they were at full strength with Steph on the floor and everything like that. You have Kuminga, who they've been trying to get into this I don't want to say killer mindset, but I guess locked in mindset, not mature mindset, if you will, to where you're not going after every single not loose ball, but you're not trying to steal every single dribble attempt or anything like that. You're not trying to play every passing lane because JK has a tendency of, guys who are in a 2-3 zone and they're playing the passing lane, but they really want to steal, so they're going to go get it. JK is one of those guys. And make or miss, if he gets to steal or not, he's going to go get it. But when he misses it, the Warriors are having issues switching and things of that nature. It's completely messing up the defense, right? When you have Draymond out there in the starting lineup with Loon's usually there to be, the rim protector, and he's like a solid rim protector, like good, not anything really spectacular, not anything Rudy Gobert, Bam Adebayo-esque, even Al Horford-esque at times, like nothing like that. He's just keep his hands up. He can contest a shot. He's 6'11", I think. And then when you look at everybody else, it's like Clay's still holding his own out there, right? Wiggins is for sure holding his own out there. And like Sandy said, Steph, he's giving effort, and JP, it just seems like he gives effort in like spurts. And he's, how he is on the offensive end. He can think that something's a great idea and then try it and then it fails. Defensively, it's kind of the same way. You can kind of see him overcorrecting a lot when he's trying to shuffle his feet or just not really keeping his hands up at all on shooters, things of that nature. So it's not totally on JP, It's just I don't think this team is like Sandy said a few episodes ago, letting go of guys like GP2 and Otto Porter, and what you've replaced them with is like sustainable guys, but not sustainable enough to impact those wins the same way GP used to and Otto used to. There were stretches last year where Otto, we were comparing him to Wilt Chamberlain because he was out there striking and doing and going crazy, and then GP2.
That's because he looks like Wilt
his.
Chamberlain.
I know. That's his illegitimate son. We all know that. But I'm just saying,
we gotta move on.
When you replace, all I'm gonna say is this last quote. When you replace GP2, guys like GP2 and Otto Porter with guys like DiVincenzo and JaMychal Green is somebody who, like, he's like a Jeff Green almost. Like he can knock down some open shots, maybe get you about 4 rebounds, but the impact that Otto was having, he was valuable corner shooter, valuable 3-and-D guy that could still guard the second best player on the court, maybe the best player off the bench. Depending on the matchup, like things like that have really come back to bite the Warriors in the ass. So hopefully they'll be able to pull some strings together in Steph's absence, and we'll just see.
Well, if we can move on to our next segment, Mr. Saney.
Yeah, man, you see the beard, man. Speaking of beards, we're talking about my boy James Harden. Now, if you guys have been living under a rock and you haven't been looking at the headlines, James Harden recently came out to say that he has made one of the biggest impacts on basketball. He has changed and influenced the game a lot more than people credit him for, and the only reason people don't talk about it as much is because he did not win a championship. It is the only thing he is missing. Now, I am unofficially saying that James Harden is basically trying to put himself on a Kobe, Steph Curry, Jordan level in terms of how much he changed the game, if he wants to make that much of a statement. Saying that the only thing holding him back from getting that respect is winning a championship. And the thing I want to ask you guys is, how credible is that statement? How much do you think James Harden has actually changed the game of basketball? Let's look at how it was played before his prime. So I'm going to say prior to 2016 and until now, and the way Harden has played the game of basketball and the way that superstars free throws might be a part of this conversation.
For sure part of this conversation.
Yeah.
For sure, man.
I just want and at the end of it, I want you to tell me what player reminds you of prime Harden the most nowadays. If there was, because like Jordan was Kobe, Steph Curry. We're seeing guys like, I don't think Trae Young is similar to Curry. He's just a point guard that shoots threes.
It's quite clearly Luka.
Yeah, for Harden, okay.
Clearly,
okay. I wanted you to say that.
Luka.
But I agree as well. It's obviously Luka who's comparable to James Harden. But how much of an impact has James Harden had on the game?
If I could start, I don't think it's as big as people think it is. When I think of people changing the game, I specifically think of Steph Curry, and it's because of his ability to shoot. And while yes, someone can have the ability to shoot, like it needs to be implemented in game, which has happened simply because you had to utilize that. Like telling Steph Curry not to shoot would be ridiculous. James Harden is not that same shooter that Steph Curry is, yet he's become this volume 3-point scorer that has changed basketball. And while I'd love James Harden, and I think he was definitely the biggest proponent in making that happen, because you needed his ability to make it happen. I think it's more of a Mike D'Antoni thing. I think about him with the Suns, with Steve Nash. That happened. I think about him with the Knicks, even with a roster that was not as capable. Melo was not supposed to be this volume 3-point scorer. He's just like an all-around scorer. They had guys like J.R. Smith. They had Steve Novak. They had Iman Shumpert. Not incredible shooters for a system like that, but they still tried to do it. They were top 3 in pace, top 3 in 3-point attempts. And you got to Harden in Houston, and he was the perfect player for that style. So I think D'Antoni was trying to make this happen for his entire coaching career, and Harden is just the perfect player to do it with. I don't think if Harden came in with this ridiculous ability to do something great like Michael Jordan's athleticism or Steph Curry's shooting ability, then that's changing the game by yourself, because coaches are forced to use that ability for the team that you're on. But with Harden, it's more like, hey, I got an idea. I think you could do it. Harden obviously had that ability, not trying to knock Harden, but it's not this Steph Curry-like ability that was, trying to have others imitate you for a sense. It was just a different style of basketball using those still elite players, but not otherworldly. So I think D'Antoni deserves more credit. Harden definitely was a big proponent in that happening, but I'd give it to D'Antoni.
See, I was literally going to use D'Antoni in my argument as well. I just finished talking to my homie about this outside. I was like, so what do you think? I asked him if he had seen the quote, and he said, yeah, I saw it. So we start talking, and I'm just like, dude, if you really think about it, like, Harden got to blossom when he got to Houston, right? Like, that was when he broke out 13, 14 year, whatever it was. So when he broke out and was kind of just like, I'm here, then you look at him throughout his best years, which low-key kind of started 2015 and then on. So when I'm looking at his numbers, right, I'm thinking Harden is one of the top 5 scorers, at least of our generation, right? Now, if you want to get into the all-time arguments, that's an argument for another day. But as far at least for our generation, Harden can say that, right? And I immediately think back to that 2019 year. He averaging 36 points a game, right? And I was like, I didn't think we were going to see something like that. It immediately made me think back to like Kobe in 06, averaging 35 a game plus. Like those numbers I never really expected to hit or be able to see like growing up. And Harden did that for me. But at the same time, I also remember when I was a kid and I would be watching James Harden throughout his run, like 2017, 18, 19, that those couple year stretches where he was just like undoubtedly like just trying to seek the best player in the league validation and that MVP validation. And I remember when he won it, was it 2018, right? 2018. When he wins it that year, he's going stupid. In my head, I'm like, okay, he's dropping 50 every other night, but we were all looking at them free throws as well. Like that was, it was like such a, I remember just being so appalled when I would go to check the box score, see that Harden dropped 57 points, 12 assists, blah, 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 but he had 22 free throw attempts. So it's just like, okay, he's a free throw merchant. We get that. And then you look at how if he changed the game, I mean, a few years later, they stopped the pump fake and jump into people rule on the 3-point shot, you remember? And everybody's like,
that is very true. He's changed the game in that way. Yes.
So, but is that for the better or for like for the better of like the fans or for the worst of players?
I think he was trying to word it in the sense, I changed basketball for the better. And I started this 3-point scoring movement, which, yes, he was a big proponent of. But I think if James Harden changed anything, it's, first off, he was a template for Luka, which these type of players that are heliocentric but not freaks of nature. For example, Russ was heliocentric, but he's a freak of nature. LeBron's heliocentric. He's a freak of nature. I'm thinking more like the skilled players who are more undersized, Harden and Luka, who are going to shoot and pass. He's created that template for that kind of player moving forward.
Right.
But the only other thing he's did is start this annoying free throw movement that guys like Joel Embiid are
right. So you look at it,
but no one.
You look at
and it's not a league wide thing. It's just a couple guys that you hate. And it's them from Harden.
You look at it and you're like, these are the guys that are the most hated on social media, and it's like, bro went from like being the OG of being a foul merchant, and then passed that to Joel, his current teammate. And look at Joel. He's leading the league in scoring. So I guess he just gave him the secret formula to winning an MVP at the most efficient level. And like, I don't know, but we know he's like one of the best scorers, but it's like, and the ring thing, that's what I want to ask you, Hoop, the ring thing. How do you feel about that last little,
that's valid. That's valid. But that's the only thing he's missing.
Why is he missing the ring? It's because he had to go through the Warrior teams.
Yeah, a lot of it circumstances.
Right.
He's missing the ring,
right?
Though.
But
that's the one thing he's missing.
We also talk about James Harden. What do we also say with James Harden when we talk about James Harden in the playoffs? What's been the one constant thing we've said each year?
Disappearing act.
So if you change the game in such a way that that you want us to look at you on the same level of a Steph Curry revolutionizing the game, or a LeBron revolutionizing the game, or Jordan or a Kobe, like those guys were not labeled like that. They weren't labeled as playoff disappearers. They weren't labeled as guys who choked. Like they were at a time, but they got past that. So I feel like if James Harden is able to get past that and get him that damn ring, if it's in Philly, that honestly it'd be great, because I really don't feel like rooting for Harden on another team. So like if he gets it in Philly, that'd be great. But if he gets that, then he finally quiets that notion. I think that once that happens, then we can revisit this conversation about how he really changed and impacted, the game. That's just my thoughts on it. Sandy, you got any?
The way I look at it is like, do I think he changed the game 100% in terms of the rule changes, in terms of those step backs, refs being a lot more, what's the word, strict when players try to pull that off now. So yeah, he definitely changed the rule book, and he definitely. I don't like the way the way he portrayed it was as if he was on that status of Steph Curry-esque changing the game. Jordan, Kobe, no. To put it bluntly, no, he's not on that level. But he definitely did change the game. And you could say that about a lot of players. A lot of players change the game in their own way. You would take inspiration from different players, and that's how newer generations model their game. That's just how basketball works. But in terms of like for a player to say I changed the game, I think there's really only a handful of players that can say that. Harden isn't in that. Even if he had a championship, he didn't completely change the style of all players where instead of focusing on a mid-range / paint dominant scoring ideology or like an offense. I'm sure we've all seen the shot charts of the 2010s compared to the 2000s when Steph Curry came in. It used to be scattered out within the three-point line, and now it's just a big line around the three-point line, a big dot in the middle in the paint, and like a few little shots in the mid-range. Not a lot of players are keeping the mid-range alive anymore, and that's because of Steph. Steph did that. Harden did not. Harden has never had an impact like that.
Do you think that obviously Steph in terms of being a player was more impactful, but the Rockets as a whole, D'Antoni and Harden, how much do you think they impacted that? Because they definitely had one. I think it was
that's
more so D'Antoni.
That's more of the outcome of D'Antoni's offense than Harden's style of play.
I agree, but do you think that D'Antoni changed the game to a somewhat similar extent that Curry did with those three teams?
No, because you don't see teams mimicking the Houston Rockets. You'll see players mimicking Steph Curry's style of play. You won't see teams mimicking that style of offense completely, though, if you know what I mean. We don't see a lot of trigger-happy NBA teams the same way we saw the Houston Rockets. Like, the Houston Rockets used to let that thing go. They used to let that thing go.
And they had a lot of guys that could let that thing go. Trevor
and
Ariza,
a lot of
Eric
guys
Gordon,
that can do it.
Gerald
Eric
Green
Gordon
for
made a
stretch
career
was
of it.
nailing threes. It was wild. Like
There was
walking thumb.
But it was also the death of them. It was the death of them because in Game 7 they missed like 20, 30 threes or something
27
crazy.
straight threes.
Most misses.
27 straight
Yeah,
threes.
Missed.
They were up 15
missed.
at one point.
It's
in that
the
game.
death of them, and that's why teams don't mimic that ideology of D'Antoni's offense fully because as far as it can take you, it can also bring you right back to square one, and that's exactly what it did for the Houston Rockets. I don't like that style of play because it's all up to chance. No matter how good of a shooter you are, you can have a bad slump in the wrong time.
You mean
the worst time to have a slump
game
happened to
seven,
the Houston
in
Rockets.
Game 7.
In a Game 7.
That's crazy.
In a Game 7.
Like that's so.
So
wild.
I would not say D'Antoni has the same level of impact and is as much of a contributor as Steph Curry was to why teams play like that now. Because I think it's more of a player basis rather than a team basis.
Agreed.
So if we're all done with this segment, that's supposed to wrap up the show. We do have about 10 or 15 minutes left if we want it. Should I preview, Saini, what I told you before?
Yeah,
To Z,
yeah.
and we
let's
could possibly
warm
make
up.
it a show.
We're gonna make it a show.
So I have been diligently working on my top 10 players of all time list. I've made one earlier in my social media career, but my outlook on basketball has changed and I wanted to update it. So I've been going through the top. I want to make a top 20 list so I can narrow down to 10. I've done 5 players so far. I've done MJ, LeBron, Wilt, Bill Russell, and Larry Bird. And what I've been doing is I have a ranking system where a perfect player is worth 100 points. Within 100 points, there's different subcategories of what it means to be a great basketball player. For example, 25 points are personal skill at your best. So whatever the 1 or 2 year stretch that was the best in your career, your ability is going to be worth 25% of your greatness. 20% is the sustained ability to be great, whether it's peak or prime. For example, LeBron has a very good longevity rating, so he might have like a 19.5 out of 20, something like that. Another 30% is your playoff performing. That means how good were you when it mattered the most. Another like 10% is accolades, and another 15 is like how did you contribute to your team's offense, defense, like stuff like that. But what I wanted to talk to you about is I've done the peak ability rankings for the 5 players I mentioned before. And I want to just reiterate, I have no bias towards these players. I put these rankings out just completely objectively. I've done a lot of research on different YouTube tapes and different videos going over what these players played like in their peaks. Want to reiterate, this is like a 1 or 2 year peak for each player. And my rating showed me that LeBron James is number 1 in terms of peak ability. This was LeBron in Miami, 2012 to 14. Larry Bird was second before MJ. And off rip, I thought my numbers need to be wrong. But after I sat down and thought about it, I really am stuck because in my peak rating system, I have different categories. I rated them all out of 10. For example, their scoring, playmaking, defense, stuff like that. I rated them all out of 10. And this is some math, so you got to hang with me. For example, scoring for LeBron, let's say it was a 9 out of 10. I would add up those ratings, and I would ratio it so it would equal to 25 points. So I'd do my little algebra equation, so it would come down to a number out of 25. LeBron was 22, Larry Bird was like 20.7, and MJ was like 20.6. Now, my ratings are, they can be fixed. But off the rip, if my categories they're all worth 10 points. They score up to 70, then I ratio it. Sorry if I'm losing you. But I have scoring production, points per game, efficiency. So guys like Giannis have great scoring production. But to leverage out skill and versatility, I have scoring, skill, and versatility. This is, are you good off ball? Are you good with the ball? Can you finish? Can you score at all different places? Stuff like that. Another category is passing, another playmaking, another defensive skill, another defensive impact. And the last one, versatility over eras. Does your game translate through time? These 7 things all are worth 10 points. They add up to 70. So you can end up with a score of, let's say, 50 out of 70. Then I'd, do a little algebra equation, x over 25, and figure out what your score would be out of 25. And Larry Bird was higher than MJ. And the biggest proponent of that was the passing and playmaking standpoint. Even though MJ, at his peak, which I believe to be around 1991, because he was still very athletic. He was still a more polished jump shooter. It's that middle of that athletic and IQ prime, right in that middle, similar to LeBron. I think that in their peaks, or at least my numbers say in their peaks, that Larry Bird was better. So I want to know your initial thought, Z. I can explain it more. Do you think that is preposterous?
So, okay, is your argument specifically this? Larry Bird was better than Michael Jordan at his peak. Is that what your argument is?
That is my numbers argument.
That's your numbers argument. Okay, I feel you. I don't necessarily think it's preposterous, because Larry's already in most people's top 10s, let alone maybe even close to that 5-6 range. So if you got some Celtics fans out there like JJ, they might already be like, yeah, screw it, I'll take it. But when you look at Larry Bird's game, I feel like in terms of his offensively, he was amazing. He was a phenomenal and underrated rebounder, in my opinion. Playmaking was pretty damn good, being the focal point of the offense. So I'm not saying it's preposterous, and I would be able to listen to your take and take your numbers for it, because I could see it. You got to think about the builds and things like. But if it's like
my issue is
say somebody rebutted and was like, oh, well, that athleticism is kind of where I'm looking at with MJ, like to make up for Larry Bird's slowness or to counteract that, he has his athleticism. So if I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, I want a more athletic guy who may be a couple inches shorter, but that athleticism can make him a few inches taller. I don't know, And they both were great defenders. But MJ, it's tough. It's tough.
The thing with MJ is that similar to LeBron, he has different peaks for different parts of his game. His scoring peak in terms of production was early in his career. When he didn't have a refined jumper, he was a ridiculous finisher, putting up like 37 a game. His scoring peak in terms of versatility, would probably be in those early 90 years, like 92, 93, when he was still very athletic, but he was getting a way more refined jump shot. I think 91 is just where you get that cross in between, where he was still a very solid defender. And the playmaking for MJ is very underrated. The passing rating is his lowest because he's not as much a willing passer, and he's not that crazy skip passer. He's not necessarily looking for all that. He did a lot of jump passes into the lane, where if he was going for a finish and then he'd dump it off, stuff like that. And he's a great playmaker. That makes himself a great playmaker due to all of his gravity. But with Larry, all of his traits crashed at one peak.
Right.
His shooting, his playmaking, his defense, it was all in that 86 season. So the issue I'm having is that, yes, it sounds preposterous for someone before I explain all this, but I don't know if it's that nuts to say that as purely a peak basketball player, at their very peak, that Larry Bird was slightly better than Michael Jordan. And obviously, comparing in the playoffs, comparing in the accolades, MJ is going to clear Larry when the thing is all said and done. But in terms of that one topic, I don't know if it's that crazy.
I don't think it's necessarily that crazy, but I think that most people's rebuttal might be something along the lines of just kind of dissecting all categories that you went into. Because in my head, like you were just saying, I immediately thought to, okay, well, we're talking about this specific game, but Mike had, like you just said, different peaks in different areas of his game. So I could immediately think to like 95, 96 mid-range Mike, and then 93 athletic freak Mike, and then 86 I'm going to drive in and drop 63 on the entire Celtics team on every single player on that team. Like he literally, like they sent everybody at him, couldn't stop him. So it's like, that would be my rebuttal, but I would say because it's Larry, it isn't crazy. Like Larry was that guy. We all know that. So it's not as crazy as you think.
Yeah, so for all my viewers out there, I just want to say this is not set in stone yet. I'm not arguing that Larry Bird is a better peak basketball than MJ. But before I go through all my research and set up my GOAT debates, I want to make sure that my numbers are equated properly. I know I have the right categories. I believe I do. But should scoring be weighted more than playmaking? But if you think about it, like a lot of people would value scoring over playmaking. But at the same time, if you look at the rules of basketball, it's 2 points is 2 points. And defense in the game, defense is worth just as much as offense. Skill-wise, offense is more difficult, which is why there's scoring versatility, passing, playmaking, and offense, and only 2 defensive categories. But for the game itself, offense is equal to defense, which is another reason for my Tim Duncan take. But we'll get into that. There's going to be so much GOAT content when we all set up our lists. Yeah. We'd have to make that a multi-part series. But that's just a sneak preview. I'm holding myself back from going crazy. Anything else you guys want to say before we conclude?
I mean, I already had the discussion with you about the Larry Bird, Michael Jordan stuff. So I feel like if I repeat my stuff, I'd be like a robot. I wouldn't be talking like naturally. And I like to actually talk on this podcast. I don't like to be scripted.
Unfiltered.
Obviously, right? So unfiltered, yeah. Like I'm just gonna say stuff I already said, and I feel like I'm just trying to trace back on my words. So I'm just gonna save that for the episodes. I'm not gonna dive deep into what you said. I'm not saying it's crazy. I mean, like I said, I talked to you. The statement I gave Hoop was, I have no research done on this topic, and I'm not gonna give you an opinion on this topic because of that. I'm gonna listen to what you have to say. I didn't call him crazy for it. I haven't looked into it myself. I will never make a take or agree or disagree with an opinion if I have no knowledge on it. So that's something me and Hoop and Z will discuss in the future, for sure. But other than that, I mean, this was episode 36. Thank you so much for tuning in. It was great to have you. We'll see you for episode 37. We are 12 days away, if God allows it, when we will be seeing each other.
Ever. The amount of content will be crazy.
Ever. Thank you for listening. Have a great night.